Now that we've gotten a handle on the pen tool, we're going to talk about some of the other drawing tools inside Illustrator. Now, these aren't necessarily drawing tools, but I would like to call them stroke tools, right? So they allow us to create strokes and shapes without the constraints of the basic shape or line tools. So below the pen tool right here, we have the Curvature Tool, which is Shift Accent on your keyboard. That's the key right below the Escape key. And the Curvature Tool is extremely similar to the Pen Tool, but it's kind of inverted. So whereas the Pen Tool, we draw straight lines and then we pull out control points, the Curvature Tool tries to draw a line of best fit that curves around points. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to click a point here and click a point here, which looks normal. And then as I start to draw my third point, it's trying to find a curve, a smooth curve that goes through that. So, for example, if I click here, it's going to draw a curve. Here's another curved point. And then finally, just like the pen tool, if I loop it back, it will finish that. Now, this is really great for drawing circles and other rounded shapes really quickly. We can also draw straight lines with the Curvature tool. So if I click once, click again, and there's a couple of ways of doing this. One is to simply double click. And what that does is that establishes, okay, the previous segment is finished. And now we can draw the next segment. It'll go back to a curve. If I want to draw another straight line, I just double click, click, and then it'll go back to drawing a curve. Now, another way of changing that is to hold down Alt or Option, and if you click, it will convert it to a straight line. So I can just hold down Alt or Option and click that, and now it's gone back to a straight line. I can also do this on existing pieces. So if I'm holding down Alt or Option, I click right here, it'll convert those points to straight lines, and if I just double click them or Option click them again, it'll convert them back to curved lines. So you can see you can get some really interesting results with this tool. It's very tricky to use, but pretty great once you get the hang of it. Okay, so some of the other drawing tools, we have the Paintbrush Tool, which is found right here. That's B on the keyboard. And the Paintbrush Tool draws a stroke, but it applies what's called a brush effect to it. So we have this brush menu right here. You can also go to Window, Brushes to find that menu. So the Brush Tool, as I drag and release, let's go ahead and look at what this has actually done. If I go to Command or Control Y, it shows me the curve. It's made a path and it's plotted some vectors along that path. And what's happening is it's applying a brush effect to that. So if I go over here, there's different brush effects. So I can click this brush or this brush, Basic, which is just your basic stroke, this, which is kind of a more painterly style, arrows. And then there's some interesting ones like this, like kind of denim hemline or something. I don't quite know what this is. If I click this, there's all these libraries that come with this. So for instance, the decorative brushes, let's find decorative scatter. And there's a lot of different options in here. And each one of these can be heavily, heavily customized. Now, I would recommend building your own brushes, and we're not going to get to that in this class. But these brushes are all pretty readily identifiable, so it's kind of like using, I don't know, the default setting in a PowerPoint, right? It's pretty obvious what you're doing, and for design jobs, I wouldn't do this for commissions or assignments that you're turning in, but they can still be pretty great to look at, or at least get some ideas. There's also arrows within this that we can play around with that are really fun. There's this great one that's like an arm. Let's see if I can find it. And just like any other path, this can all still be modified with the direct selection tool. I can still come in here and grab each point and move it around. I'm going to go ahead and just delete this. So that's the Paintbrush tool. Further down, where we have the Shaper tool, we have the Pencil tool. That's also N on the keyboard to get to the Pencil tool. And this is closer to a traditional tool in Illustrator. So I'm going to hit D just to make sure I'm on my default, so white fill and black stroke. And as I draw a line, it's going to plot some vector points, and it strokes that. So if I change the stroke, I can change all the typical settings that you would be able to on any other type of stroke. The Pencil tool also can make live shapes. If I return it back to its starting point, it'll put a little circle there and close that. So the Pencil tool is really more widely used than the Paintbrush tool. Brushes are kind of hard to get a handle on, and and they sort of do different things. They're really more like clip art, so I wouldn't recommend using them too much right now, but get a good handle on the pencil tool, the paintbrush tool, and the curvature tool, and the pen tool, and you will be an expert at drawing in Illustrator.